We've got a lot of really great toys, but in terms of thinking through how do we walk someone spiritually in their spiritual development, what is it we want to teach them about the Bible? Do we want to just tell them stories and tell them to trust us, or do we want to teach them to read the Bible for themselves? All of those things. We believe in something that's referred to as the 4-14 window, which simply put just states a fact that the overwhelming majority of people in the United States make a decision about their faith in Jesus between the window or the opportunity of the ages 4 and 14 years old. Overwhelming majority make that decision between 4 and 14. So when we think through that as a church, we want to make sure that we're investing a lot of resources, both financially, but also manpower, volunteers, efforts, thinking, creativity, space, all those things that we're investing in that particular window, because the facts tell us, hey, that's when people make a lot of decisions about their faith. And so it's a big deal. So we want to invest in it. But this is not something that's new. This isn't like this light bulb moment that all of a sudden Foundation discovered. This has been a historical trend of the last 40, 50 years or so. And so a lot of churches, in fact, I would say most churches, think through this lens, at least on a small scale, most at a large scale, thinking, hey, it's really important that we give kids between the ages of 4 and 14 every opportunity to find faith in Jesus. Now, with that, that's a great thing. That's a really good thing. With that, though, we've created our own biggest problem. It's a problem because we put so much pressure on the 4-14 window that it's created some negative side effects or results as the further along we gotten from that 4-14 window. In other words, what's happened is we've had a lot of kids that decided to follow Jesus, but they did so because it made their dad proud or their mom proud or their grandparents proud. They did so because they got in trouble and they thought this would make trouble go away. They did so because their friends did it. And so they said, hey, I want to do that. I don't want to be left out. About 5 years ago, there was an organization called the Pine Tops Foundation that did a comprehensive study of Christians and former Christians who grew up in the church over the last 20 to 30 years. And that study paints an alarming picture that really allows us to see the results of this emphasis on the 4-14 window and some of the side effects that have taken place because of that pressure put on that 4-14 window. Let me share with you just briefly, it's a really long study, but let me share you briefly some of the results. Now they give, as they project into the future based upon how people are interacting with the church currently, and this would, the folks they studied ranged current ages from about 20 years old to 50 years old, right? So that's the age group they were studying. That's where they kind of started gathering trends from and then have now projected, if things continue on the same path, they've projected where things will be in 2050. So they give us a best case scenario, like a middle of the road scenario, and a worst case scenario if things continue the way they are now. So I want to share with you the worst case scenario. Worst case, if things continue the way they are now, with the emphasis on the 4-14 window and all the pressure that goes into it and all the resources and all those things, this is what's taking place, right? Worst case scenario. By the year 2050, 42 million kids raised in Christian homes will disaffiliate from Christianity. 42 million, worst case, right? But let's be real, right? We're not gonna be worst case. You know what I'm saying? Like, we're not a worst case. Let's be Patty positive real quick. Let's be an optimist. Optimist, what's an O word? Optimist Ollie. Let's be an optimist, right? Let's go to best case scenario and just speak it into existence. This will be our reality. Best case scenario, by the year 2050, only 35 million kids raised in Christian homes will disaffiliate from Christianity. That's a really bad best case scenario. Think about it. That's over 1 million young adults every year, children who are in our Sunday school classrooms, youth groups, confirmation classes, mission trips are saying Jesus is no longer anyone that I want to have my life identified with. 35 million best case scenario. That's an issue. It's an issue, and we've got to be upfront about what's causing it. The practical cause for those walking away from faith is that their understanding of the person of Jesus from their childhood and teen years was not sufficient to keep them in a relationship with him into adulthood. That's the primary cause of that study. They say, hey, the Jesus that they grew up knowing was not a sufficient relationship. It wasn't a sufficient God. It wasn't a sufficient Savior for them once they started to think on their own. There's a few reasons for this. A lot of them have to do with the church. But there's one in particular that we'll get to in just a second. Church can't really do much about. The first one's a church thing. Student ministry, kids ministry has had nothing to do with spiritual development. Student ministry was event-centric, right? So when we say student ministry, we mean middle school, high school students. And then in churches across the nation, it's event-centric. So the way we measure success is how many middle school and high school students can we get to show up to an event. And if that number is really high, then we feel like, hey, we've done something now. But there's no idea or thought process into, hey, if we were to have 300 kids show up to an event, how do we even have the tools or the ability, positive role models, mentorship, whatever it is, do we even have the ability, resources to actually help spiritually develop that many children? No, it doesn't matter if we have the resources. Let's just make sure we have space for them. And if we can just have them all show up, then we will feel better about ourselves. Or kids ministry on Sunday mornings is just babysitting and playtime. We've got a lot of really great toys. But in terms of thinking through how do we walk someone spiritually in their spiritual development from 2 years old all the way through 5th grade, what is it we want to teach them about the Bible? Do we want to just tell them stories and tell them to trust us, or do we want to teach them to read the Bible for themselves? All of those things. The next thing that's created this epidemic is kids are taught that their faith hinges on simply asking Jesus into their heart. While this is well-intentioned, it never shows up anywhere in the entire Bible. Like there's not a single person ever recorded in the entirety of the Bible itself that says, hey, Jesus, I got a 3-bed, 2-bath home right here next to my little left ventricle. If you'll just move in there, everything should be fine. It doesn't exist. It's not there. But that's what we do because we want a simple solution. We want that 4 to 14 window to matter. And how do we communicate that to a 7-year-old? Ask Jesus to come and live in your heart. Jesus never asks to say, hey, you know what? I would love to come with you in your life. Let me move into your heart. Make some space for me to move in. No, Jesus says over and over and over again, I will not come live with you. You come follow me. In fact, he says, when you're following me, I need you to pick up your cross every single day. Every single day. Deny yourself and follow after me. Come follow me. Don't ask me to move in with you so you can carry me around to your life and say, well, I got my little Jesus hut right here. Jesus, no, I'm calling you to something bigger than that. But if that's what we've reduced a relationship with Jesus to is a moment in time where they pray a prayer no one in the Bible ever prayed, then no wonder 35 million people are walking away in the next 30 years saying, hey, that Jesus means nothing to me. Because that version of Jesus doesn't actually exist. And the third thing that's causing this epidemic is simply parents that don't live it out during the week. That they're Sunday morning only. They get their Jesus in because it's what a family should do in their mind. But then once the 1 hour and 15 minutes on a Sunday morning comes to a close and the other 167 hours in a week, it doesn't look like they're church people. It looks like they're just people. Just like anybody else. On Sundays, well, we just flip the church people mode on. And we do those things. But it's no wonder when all of a sudden they get to think for themselves and figure out what is the rhythm of their life. The truth is, the rhythm of their life is probably going to reflect the rhythm of your family's life. Sunday morning only. And eventually they realize, why would I give one of my only off days a week to something that actually doesn't impact me the rest of the week? Like my parents are dumb for doing, why did they give away our Sunday mornings? I mean, they didn't care about it the other 6 days of the week. Why would I give the church some of my money? That's the dumbest thing we ever did. If it doesn't impact who we are. They make a really good, logical business decision, which honestly, you can't blame them for. They don't know any different. So our solution to this is just 2 words: all in. That we as a church would be all in. That we would figure out ways to partner with parents and community members, anyone who had any interaction with kids in a positive way, to be all in. You see, you might think that All In Sunday is about dedicating children, but it's not. It has nothing to do with dedicating children, and has everything to do with parents dedicating themselves to being all in so that their kid might have the best opportunity to choose for themselves, to own their own faith. And if they were to own their own faith, they might actually carry it with them and share it with others. That's what All In Sunday is about. These families here in the front row, they've come today to say, we're all in on giving our kid the best shot to own their own faith. Not borrow it from us, not inherit it from us, but for them to take ownership of their own faith.